To me, the thing that has been most helpful in all of it is a genuine sense of deeper empathy and compassion for the energetic state of the world, the systems that have let people down and truly made them feel that they can't rely on them, and the systems that have done a disservice and injustice, which has now led to this emotional evacuation, as you called it. And to me, using it as a way of having deeper empathy, deeper compassion, a genuine sense of recognition that although everyone does have choice and does have agency, definitely, there is an overarching energetic system that is almost keeping people imprisoned in this space. And that prison is now addictive to stay in. I feel for that. I deeply feel for that. And it affects me because I recognize that people haven't been set up for success by the education system, by the way the economy's set up, by the way anything's set up. Like it's not set people up for success. And naturally for people in their home, a lot of people weren't set up for success. And so we have to zoom out and look at the context, because if I zoom in and just look at that one tweet or that one comment, God, it's like a bullet to the chest, And it's like, I've always had this vision, and I've kind of done it mentally sometimes because I can't do it physically. And for every person that feels that way, I was like, I wish I could sit down with every person individually who felt a certain way and have a contextually relevant, honest, authentic conversation with each person and bare my soul and be vulnerable and open my heart. But we can't. And I also know that one post can't do that for everyone. Like it's not possible for one quote, one image, one message, one podcast episode that will speak to everyone, to make everyone feel seen, heard, and understood. I could just about do that on a one-to-one level, let alone a 1 to 100 million level. How are you going to do that? And so I also have empathy for myself, and I extend that compassion back to myself and recognize I'm a limited human being who, just as that individual is limited by their systems and their setup and their energy, so am I. And there's no way in which I could respond to this individual and satisfy this exchange with 140, 280 characters. Like, how's that even possible? And so I think, to me, deepening my compassion and empathy externally and internally have been the only relevant tools, as woo-woo or as spiritual as they may sound, because there is no practical habit-based solution that I can give you some tactics and ideas, but I know as well that at one point they're just logical and theoretical and practical, but they're not, they don't hit me there. And so to me, I've seen it all as a simulation and an experiment to deepen human emotion, deepen human empathy, deepen human compassion, and a reminder of my fallibility so that I can embrace my own insignificance, so that I can therefore take shelter in the source and the universe and God, and to allow for space for that. If I was able to control every one of these things and make it work perfectly, I may, in a very crude sense, you may, under false pretenses, start believing you're the controller to some degree. And I think anyone who's experienced success in certain domains starts to feel like the controller in their relevant fields. And I think all of these things are expedited in order just to encourage you to have an ego death and pulverize the arrogance of whatever kind, by the way. I don't mean in a sense of that I feel I'm important, but we all have a sense of I'm the controller. I can make things work. I know what's right. I'm this, I'm that. And this is all reminding us of we're not the controller. We have to ultimately take shelter. We have to ultimately give up the reins. And I ultimately have to surrender and accept that there is a greater source, there is a greater power, and that when I'm in connection with that and I'm in service of that, then I'm happy and I'm joyful. But if I'm trying to be that or extrapolate energy from that to control and navigate, then I'm forever going to be unhappy. So to me, that's a quick version of the stuff that I try and work on, not to be helpless. I don't feel helpless in that. I feel at home. It's almost like, when you're taking shelter of a greater source to take care of things you can't take care of, it's not because you're helpless or because you're weak. It's actually the greatest sign of strength to know I can call up a friend to help me. Am I more strong because I can move home myself and not ask anyone for help? Or am I stronger because 3 of my friends came and helped me out and carried the load? I'm stronger for asking for help. I have a better community and network. You'd say that person's smarter and healthier. And so I think of that same way on a universal level. At least I try to. I'm working on it.
I love that. And I realize from what you said that, the greatest sense of safety seems to arrive from not trying to control everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's counterintuitive, right? We think, okay, well, how do you get safety? Well, you have to get rid of vigilance. How do you get rid of vigilance? Well, you decide what you do and don't have to pay attention to. And at some point, if one decides, I can't control all of this, you have one of 2 options. Either that means you're just waiting for that wave to come demolish you, wave of whatever, or you trust, like you trust in something to make everything okay,
mm-hmm.
even if that wave comes, and I've talked before on podcasts, I believe in God. I do, and of course I believe in everyone's right to believe or not believe what they believe in. I think that the notion of giving up trying to control everything and giving over control to more universal forces or a universal force, whatever one's mode of thinking happens to be, I believe they're entitled to, is probably the most peace-inducing step I've ever taken. And I thought it would be, matched with a little sneaking, voice in the back. Yeah, but it's not. And I don't know how that works at the level of neuroscience. I know there are neuroscientists who are trying to explore this. And as the data evolve, I'll certainly pay attention to it, not with the intention of trying to undermine any kind of larger sense of anything, but just out of interest.
For sure.
Right?
I'd love to see
it's
it.
far too interesting.
Too
There's actually a woman at Stanford. I haven't yet to talk to her. We should both talk to her. She said, I forget her name at the moment because I just learned about her work in the Department of Anthropology, who has spent her entire career studying people's inner voices, people who hear voices, people who hear the voices of others. And sure, this sometimes goes into the domain of people who have auditory hallucinations and so forth, but also just these different scripts that people have in their mind that include their own voices and other voices we've internalized from childhood. This resonates with me a lot because when I was a kid, after my parents would put me to sleep, I used to arrange dialogues between people I had heard that day, and I could hear their voices in very clear ways in my head. And I would remember things they said, and I could create these dialogues. And so I've also always had a very strong audiographic memory. It's not as if everything I hear I remember verbatim. That actually would be a super skill. It would have saved me in a lot of arguments. But in all seriousness, I think what you describe about essentially a letting go or a giving over of the need for that control that we all experience, the desire for control, is really where the solution lies, I think. I know this because many people have said it, and it's very hard to do, but that once one does it once, you can do it again.
Yeah.
And it's a practice.
It's a practice.
It's not a you write it down and it's done. It's a practice. And, I also am thinking about the kind of counterintuitive nature of the fact that, we're talking at once about letting go and not trying to control everything, but also pushing oneself to be more resilient and tenacious and things of that sort. And so I feel like all of life is like that. All of life is about, yes, you need to take care of your physiology. You need to get your sleep at night, but it's also okay to get a bad night's sleep every once in a while. It's okay to not do every protocol. In fact, it's encouraged to not do every protocol. The expectation on us is not perfection, right? It's I think, being able to toggle between these different states.